Yo, pull up a chair, let the real talk begin. Faith on the table where the brothers lock in. Life gets heavy, but we stand our ground. Truth in the room when the circle comes round. No mask, no front, just real man here. Talking about faith through the doubt and the fear. From the grind of the week to the lessons we share. Welcome to the men's round table, pull up a chair. Men's round table series, step inside. Real men, real faith where the truths collide. Voices at the table where the stories get shared. Welcome to the men's round table. Pull up a chair.
Welcome back to the Men's Roundtable Series Interview Spotlight. I'm your host, Mr. U. If you're watching it for the very first time, thanks for making us part of your week. We're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook as well. And of course, all social media platforms. You can find our episodes, clips, and cuts of all the great shows that we do here on this broadcast. But again, thanks again. If you're confused a little bit, let me help you out. Every Thursday night at 7 p.m. EST, we have a men's roundtable series. We have a group of panelists from around the country, even around the world, that are on topic, talking about issues that are germane to men. This is an opportunity to have a one-on-one interview with a husband, father, brother, or son who has a story to tell that is compelling and transformative. We're going to have more of that today. So if you don't mind, welcome a good guest of mine. Jon Symes is in the house. John. Good to have you in the studio, sir.
Mr. U, good to see you. Thanks so much for the invite.
The pleasure's mine. Can't wait to hear.
Let's dive into some deep, rich conversation.
Let's do it, man. I'm excited to hear about all the things that you do. I probably could have given you an even deeper introduction, but you're a Renaissance man, in my opinion. I want everybody to hear from your mouth who you are, what you do, and we'll get into some discussion about why traditional masculinity falls or fails, or both. But a little background on you, John, where you're from, how'd you get from that place to where you are today? Go ahead, brother, share.
All righty. I was born in the UK 60-something years ago. And
you're great.
in a very kind of orthodox middle-class family. One thing that was important in our family was to somehow to keep an eye on the common good. That was something that my mum and dad held strong. And so the idea of somehow contributing to a conversation larger than just my own life has always been with me. Took a turn 20 odd years ago. I got an invitation to come to the States. I live in California, and got an invitation to work with an amazing nonprofit based in San Francisco. And the work we were doing there was really about trying to help us as citizens of the world see that the future is in our hands. I like that. And that really got me into examining the stories that we live inside. And at the same time, I was starting to reach the end of the limits of usefulness of the stories I'd been born into. I was starting to see that the stories that lived through me were insufficient for the life I wanted to live. And so a whole inquiry has been started there. In fact, when I reflect, I've been in the business of transformation for 40 years now, and I'm still work in progress. So as work in progress, I sometimes have the opportunity to lend a hand to other men, to other people who are looking to escape from the stories that are keeping them limited. And that's the work that I do as a mentor and a speaker and a teacher.
I love it. I know this conversation has multi-layers to it. Anytime I get a chance to talk to men about men stuff, I know it goes some places. So I got to keep us honest and make sure we stay within the confines of time. We do have a busy schedule ahead of us today, but I want to make sure we cover all of the high points if possible. But this conversation is hopefully about, men who have done what was told will bring fulfillment. Come to find out beneath the surface, they feel disconnected. It didn't seem to work. You talk a lot about where traditional masculinity kind of fails us. Look for you to hear, or left for our audience to hear, why you feel that way and what you've been seeing. Can you share a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure. Firstly, I always find it interesting that we talk about traditional masculinity when we're really looking back only maybe 50 or 100 years. The traditions of masculinity, if we go back to ancient knowledge, ancient ways, are very different. But in today's conversation, traditional masculinity is really about a masculinity designed to serve the interests of a patriarchal society. And we've been put in this position where we as men are the holders of property, and that properties included the financial wealth we have, but it's also included the lives of the people who depend on us. And
Yeah.
it's not so long ago that a wife was considered to be the property of a husband. So we're talking about a structure that's designed to keep control of resources in place in a patriarchal structure. And therefore, we've been taught roles that allow us to fit in, that allow us to control and organize our own area, our own kingdom, we might say. But then it's you and me in a competition. We're in a competition for resources. We're in a competition to be top dog in the world. And so we're put into roles where the culture encourages to take on roles which allow the continuation of the society which is patriarchal in shape, which is capitalist in flavor, and these roles perpetuate that. Now, the world's changed so much that we've outgrown those roles. If they were ever useful, if they could ever actually be justified because of the equities that were built into that,
Yeah.
today it's blatantly obvious to all but the most biased observer, I would say, blatantly obvious that the traditional roles fail everybody. They fail women because the women are unsafe in the world. They fail boys and girls who are growing up without clear role models, and they fail us as men. We're losing out. We're losing out on acknowledging, knowing, and expressing our full humanity. So those are the roles that we've been encouraged into in the culture. There's a resurgence of encouragement now to take us back towards those roles, but we've simply outgrown them. Those old stories are way too small for how magnificent each of us are. And it's about time that we harness that, because that's what life's about. And these times that we live in demand the best of us, demand the best of you and me working together. And so it's time to move on from traditional masculinity.
Question. I love that, John. You spent probably more than 2 decades, if I'm not being too generous, helping leaders, helping men in transition and high performers like myself, kind of uncover the, I guess, the narrative that shape how we think and how we lead and how we perform and how we even define ourselves as men. What would you say is the biggest shift that you had to make for yourself before you can really begin to really help people like who I just described get to that place? What would the big shift for you? It could have been an identity shift. It could have been understanding of masculinity. It could have been a leadership shift. Your purpose in life that you discovered. What was the big shift for you that enabled you to help other people?
Well, I'm going to probably name 3. I think there was a shift that happened in my 20s when I was working inside a corporation, and I got exposed to training for leaders. And I realized in the training that we actually have agency in our own lives, that you don't have to simply play out the stories that you were born into, that you can actually intervene in your own life. And that's a key point, because, to the audience listening, until we decide that we can be a force for changing our own lives and our own behavior, then we're really stuck on automatic. And so that's a key point. And then there's a key point for me when I realized that I wanted to use my skills and my experience to play a role that was larger than just my own life. And that set me looking out into the world in a different way, and trying to understand in a certain way, how does the world work? How does the culture get shaped in our world? And I began that inquiry. But then there's a much more human bit of it, which is still unfolding in me. And it's to really recognize and adjust to the huge influence my father had in my life. He was a strong man, and I think when I was 20, I probably thought I'd escaped his shadow, and when I was 40, I thought I was my own man. And now in my 60s, I realized, and my dad's gone. He died a few years ago.
Oh, sorry, brother.
Well, thank you. And I'm still realizing what a strong imprint he left on me, and how many habits and patterns I took on unconsciously, and how in some ways I was always questing for his approval.
Mm.
So, there are a few different lessons I've had to learn to open up to allow me to remake me as a man. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Man, this, like I said, this has so many layers to it. I'll keep every time I get on this show and do an interview with great gentlemen like yourself, I always reference our Thursday night show because I can't help it. It was born out of the cries that I heard from men, not only in the United States, but also in the UK, in places like Scotland, Ireland, Africa, Australia. I heard the same cry. I'm like, wow. So it was eye opening. What it told me was that it's not just a national problem. We have a universal issue where men don't feel as though they can escape those narratives. They can't break through and be all that they've been created and purposed to be. And I created the Men's Roundtable Series podcast for that specific reason. It wasn't to get likes and engage in analytics and subscriptions. It was none of that stuff. The whole point was for conversations just like this one.
Right.
Where men across the world can hear that, you know what, there's a man that was in your same spot, perhaps even a worse condition than you were in, and they were able to make a life. They were able to be a husband, father, brother, and son in the fullness of whatever that means. He's still evolving, still growing. We're not perfect. We haven't reached perfection, but they have there's a pathway for them to get to the place they need to get to. That's all both of these shows, the Spotlight and the Roundtable Series, it's all been about, John. So when I hear something like what you're talking about, does my heart good, brother? Because it's like this is what this is all about. Yeah. It's more than just surface level self-improvement. We're talking about, wholesale changes that we have to make sometimes. Yeah. What do you do, John, when you run into somebody who is, or when you're counseling somebody or sitting with somebody in a coffee shop, however you're interacting, where they're basically following the script. They're following those unwritten rules about what success looks like. Yeah. What emotions are acceptable. Right. How men are supposed to lead, where they're supposed to capitulate, or where they're supposed to be aggressive. Yeah. All of the scripts that honestly nobody else understands but men, because we live it. How do you? I know it's a lot to ask for one answer for, because I just named 6 different things, but
no, it's great.
How do you deal with a person who is following the script, and that negative script is not going to get them where they want to be? How do you help them? What do you say to them?
Well, this is the beauty, because the script so often is running in the unconscious. And so perhaps the guy I'm sat across from doesn't recognize that he's playing a pattern on repeat. And so sometimes it's just a couple of questions to say, so does this kind of thing happen often? Or is that how you normally would choose to respond to a situation? And this is the step of awareness. And so sometimes we're just trying to become aware that patterns are happening repeatedly. And then when we can start to see that, the next thing and it's sad that it has to happen this way, but it requires us to attach pain and suffering to the process that we're stuck with. Because we're seldom willing to step out of a pattern that's habitual into some other behavior unless there's a significant pain. The lure of something better is often, and I'd be interested to know if this is you've seen this in your work with men, but it normally takes a pain to move us forward. I think there are 2 ways of moving a donkey: a stick and a carrot. And unless the carrot is super big, a donkey's going to need something to move it forward, something to get away from, and so we want to get into awareness, and then we want to see the pain or the cost that we're paying for the limitation that's happening, the loop that we're in. Why is it that my relationship is dead? Why have I become a roommate with my wife? Why don't my kids want to hang with me? What does it feel like to recognize that? And so often we have to drop into what's the emotional charge that's there, the cost that we're paying. And then people become more receptive. And then the curiosity comes out, and there's well, how could it be different comes across the table. And then we can start to explore a range of options. But we have to go through awareness and usually through pain to get there.
Yeah. I'll do my best to try to answer that question. It's a fantastic question, by the way, man. I think I'm being interviewed now. But one of the things that I see a bit of a pattern with, I'm not saying it's an all-inclusive, one-size-fits-all thing. I'm not saying that. Hear me well, please, everybody. But there's many times for myself personally where pain pushed me into purpose. It was because of a need. It was a desperation. So you know what? The status quo, I've been doing it. I've been following my mom and dad's blueprint, doing what they said to do, to have the American dream and such. And I've been doing it for 30 years and it didn't work. It's not working. I'm not fulfilled. I feel empty. I feel dead inside. And stepping into entrepreneurship, venturing out into levels of creativity and community that I wasn't doing before, it changed everything. So I feel like pain sometimes pushes us into purpose. There's an old story about a dog with a nail in his paw. And everybody trying to figure out why the dog is just howling and making this noise. And I'm not saying that men are dogs. What I'm saying is that sometimes we have an option. Sit there and let the nail stay in our paw and just complain and howl. Or say, hey, this is why I'm hurting. Look at this. Can you help me? And sometimes that second option is harder for men to do.
Yeah.
To lift up that hand and say, you know what? I'm hurting. Would you please help me get this thing out? So I don't hurt as much as I don't hurt chronically anymore. Can you help me out with that? So I think pain and purpose are indelibly linked. But again, I'm not putting a one size fits all in this. It's not a formula. I'm just saying that a lot of times before we can get into the place of real purpose, you got to go through some stuff. You can't have a testimony without a test, you know? So I just kind of feel like, I kind of feel like there's a correlation there, but I don't know if that answers your question or not, John, but that's kind of where I'm at with,
I think that's beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. Because I think what you've said is essentially what I've seen, that pain gets transmuted, can be transmuted. It's not done automatically. We have to put the effort in, but it's possible to transmute pain into learning and yes, into purpose. And because we're riffing, can we explore the carrot end of things as well?
Of course.
Because, you know, what's the role model? What's the example that we have? What's the culture tell us about what a good guy looks like? How a mature, responsible, adult, masculine energy plays out through a man's body. And we have precious few role models of that. What we see on the stage of what political leadership, business leadership, leadership in the culture, visibility in the arts, there's very little that actually shows us a model that's very different from what we started off talking about, traditional masculinity. And I find that super sad. It means it's difficult for young guys to see a model. It's difficult as a young father to grow into, well, what am I wanting to show to my kids? So I'm super curious about how we're going to create a picture and communicate a picture of how we could be as men.
You definitely got to get into that. It's the kind of thing that we talk about very frequently because it's a real thing. We're living with this thing. For you guys that are watching and listening online, wherever you're watching this show, if you have a question for John or myself, by all means, don't be shy. Drop it in the chat. No such thing as a dumb question. If it's a dumb question, I just won't answer it. But beside that, we'll go ahead and drop it in the chat. We'll do our best to answer it while we're here on the air, while we still have more time left in our show. When I say the word midlife to you, John, can you tell me what that actually means? Because I'll be honest about it. What I grew up thinking it meant, you know, a guy around my age bracket getting a muscle car, or a sports car to feel better about where he is in life. He sacrificed so much early on, do all the right things, all the right narratives we discussed earlier in the show. And you know what? Now it's time for him to reward himself so he can kind of help find the inner man that got buried under all that obligation and false identity. when I say midlife to you, John, what does midlife mean to you? What's that mean?
Midlife's a precise moment. It's the precise moment at which you realize that the stories you've been living by don't serve you.
Ooh, okay.
And it might come these days. It could come to you in your late 20s. It could be somewhere in your 30s, your 40s. You might still be, you might be late to the game. Maybe I was late to the game. I don't know, but you might be realizing in your 50s and 60s and 70s that there's a bunch of stories that have been running you that do not serve. And it's time, if you choose, and if you choose, free will is our greatest gift. And not everyone is willing to choose the pain of engineering changes in their own life, or the challenge of engineering. Let me say it that way. But if we choose, there's an opportunity to explore into new stories. So I've just come out of a long relationship, and I realized that in that relationship, there was a degree to which I had given up some of my agency. Now I can actually only see that from now in the rearview mirror, now that I'm outside of that relationship. But we settle into patterns in life, and we play those patterns until they don't work any longer. That's what I call midlife. And then we have to accept the challenge of examining our lives, what's caused them to be the way that we're complaining they are. How do we want them to be different?
Yeah. You know, there's such an emphasis, especially with men, on I guess, a life that is considered successful versus a life that's aligned. And we've been talking about that a lot on the show, about the aligned life. For you personally, John, you've obviously heard many stories, shared experiences. You've been in the company of people who are following the script to whatever success level that actually leads them to, if any at all. What's an aligned life looks like for John?
Yeah, I didn't think about this in advance, but what pops into my mind is that story about, how hard we're working to climb the ladder, but we realize the ladder's leaning against the wrong wall.
Yeah.
So I think we're coming to a time in the story of the human species when we're going to have to accept some big changes to how we choose to live, or we're going to run into some serious problems. And I think the wall I want the ladder lined up against is the continuation of life on Earth. I don't think I want the ladder lined up against the wall called John's material success. It's time for us to actually broaden the lens and look beyond success defined as the amount of money I've got in the bank, or my reputation, the number of books I've published, or the number of friends I've made. All of that, I'm afraid, is it's too late for that. We're in a time when we start to look at how is this species going to make it through the multiple challenges converging at this part of history. And I want to see the ladder leaning against the wall called the continuation of life on Earth. The protection, us men using our role as protectors, our capacity to protect what's sacred, to protect that which bears life, that which carries life, and the opportunity for our children and grandchildren to enjoy some range of choice like we've done, to steward our planet, because that's all we have. That's what we depend on for the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food, the clothes. Everything comes from the planet. So it's time for a serious reorientation about what success is, I think.
Okay. When you talk about, I think you mentioned about hidden narratives. If I got that correct, I'm attributing it to you correctly. What would you say are hidden narratives? Because I know there's some things that I think they're kind of right here in our face. They come through our television screens.
Yeah.
They come through the movies in cinema. Those don't seem hidden to me. But in your assessment from your experience, what's a hidden narrative? What kind of examples can you find of those?
Well, we've talked about a couple that men live with. And
Okay.
so we as men, we live with narratives that say, don't show your emotions, don't ask for help, figure it out on your own. There are more, but you and I know those narratives and how they lead
Yeah.
us into feeling isolated and alone. And then we
They're
could
not
choose.
hidden for us then. They're hidden for other people, I guess. They're not hidden.
They're
Is
not.
that what
No,
you mean?
we get to know them real well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but there are hidden narratives that place human value on a hierarchy. Some of us are worth more than others. And that might
Ooh,
depend on our age, that might depend on our gender, it might depend on the God we worship or don't, or the color of our skin. But the story there that we don't see, we get caught in the story of talking about the differences. But the story we're missing is that we've decided that some human beings are worth more than others. Ooh, that's that. That's where the unconscious story has got a real grip. And when we're confronted with the fact that maybe we've allowed ourselves to live inside the story, that somebody's life is worth more than another's, that might be an opportunity to make a shift. And then if we scale up from there and we go to, I talked about a time of crisis that we're in. If we talk about it on a planetary scale, we live with the story that whatever we see is ours for the taking. Doesn't matter what it is. It might be a hillside of trees that I want for lumber. It might be some fish that I'm going to trawl in nets that are 5 miles wide from the ocean bed. It might be that I'm going to take advantage of a population of people who need work and I'm going to pay them minimum wage and squeeze them hard so I can make more money in my business. So there are stories underneath, and one of the stories that's most divisive is the story that we're separate from each other and we're separate from the earth. The story that has you and me be different and unconnected, and we're two rational beings meeting somewhere and having a conversation. But it's not the case. We're actually inextricably interwoven as people. We're actually an expression of life. You're a unique expression of life here on planet Earth, as am I, as is each of the listeners. And we're connected in ways that we don't understand. And because we can't understand them and see them under a microscope, we tend to assume that's not the case. If you look
yeah.
at ancient wisdom, that's the way it's still alive in some of the indigenous communities of the world, or in those communities that live on the earth, what they honor is the connection of all beings, the interconnection of all beings, and our connection into the earth itself. So there are some stories, that are really hidden from view. The story that we are separate it's not discussed. It's not visible, but it's powerfully affecting the way we operate.
We're almost running out of time, so we'll try to get a couple questions in. Might need you to rapid fire me just a little tiny bit so we can try to get them in. We talked a little bit early on in the show. For you guys that have missed it, of course, we wind back to the beginning of the podcast, wherever you find our show to listen or watch it. But we talked about traditional masculinity, what it looks like, where it has merit and where it doesn't. But for you, Jon, what does a healthy masculinity look like to you?
Yeah, it's that question of what's the role model. And I think we have an opportunity and perhaps a responsibility as men for protecting that which is sacred. I think that's at the core of it. And I can think back and I can picture this in earlier expressions of our civilization, and I can picture it in today's world. We as men don't carry life. One of the definitions of a man is not woman. We can't carry life. We can't produce a new life. We can't carry out that function. That's been assigned to the female of the species. And so our job is because the continuation of life is perhaps our greatest priority. Therefore, our
Got it.
role is to do what we can to protect that. And I think that's at the heart of what a real man wants to do.
Love it. Everybody watching, listening out there, thanks again. Drop those comments and questions. We're almost out of here, so time's running out. Final question, Jon, for you. First off, thanks for being here. You're an author, a speaker, a mentor. You do it all those things very well. I can clearly see that you're a man of great thought and consideration, and I value being connected with you. Let's end the show with this question I want to ask you, and then we'll close the conversation out for today. So, in your assessment, Jon, what does, for those men that are trapped in that old story, trapped in that narrative, trapped in the proverbial script, the hamster wheel, if you will, what does freedom actually look like for that man? Encourage them on our way out of there, on our way out of this broadcast today. Go ahead, Jon.
Thank you. Firstly, to every one of us, and that's me and you included, we are not broken. We're living inside the wrong stories. And those stories keep each of us from, and I really believe this, they keep us from the magic, the human essence that we are. Inside every heart, every single heart is the capacity for love and compassion, for curiosity and intelligence, for strength and perseverance, for kindness and gentleness. That's available to all of us. And if you ever get a chance to look in the eyes of a newborn child, take that opportunity, because you'll see the potential of the human being in the eyes of that child. And then once we're exposed to these stories, we start to get cut off from that human essence. And it's the stories that keep us. So freedom is what freedom is where we arrive when we can overcome the effect of the stories that we were born into and find the human essence that's inside. That's why I call my work Whole and Free. We are whole. We are magnificent. We're covered over in stories. Yes, every one of us has some version of the stories. But when we can see the stories, when we can disconnect them, when we can find alternatives, we find freedom. Freedom to be you, freedom to be exactly who you are, to express all of that human essence that lives inside of you. Whole, you're whole, and you can be free when you get to wipe away those old stories. And I wish every listener the opportunity to experience themselves in their wholeness and their freedom at some point. And if there's any way I can support that process, that's my pleasure. That's my work.
I love it. Author, mentor, speaker, Jon Symes is in the house. Thank you, Jon.
Mr. You, thank you. Thanks for all the great work you do.
The pleasure's mine. So if you're watching us for the first time, thanks for making us part of your week. We are up on Men's Roundtable Series podcast every Thursday night at 7 p.m. EST. And of course, our interview spotlight, which is all day long on Wednesdays and Thursdays. So we got episodes that are brand new, already placed today and coming out today and tomorrow. So thanks for continuing to tune in. Jon and I are going to talk offline about some new business we need to talk about. But if you guys are watching, thanks again for supporting our show, YouTube channel, Apple Podcast, Spotify, however you hear us. Thanks for making us part of your day. Have a good one.
Men's Roundtable Series, step inside. Real men, real faith, where the truths collide. Voices at the table where the stories get shared. Welcome to the Men's Roundtable, pull up a chair.